Good afternoon, potato chips. Another wee video today, and I don't normally think what I'm going to do on a Sunday from a Sunday night my Sunday night chats, but this week I was sitting down in my office here and I was playing away. I made that wee video on the wallet, which is fantastic, by the way, um, and I was getting the knives set out for tomorrow that I'm going to talk about hard use knives, and what hard use knives are with pocket knives that we have, and just separating what in my head a hard use pocket knife is, because that's what they are. They're pocket knives. They're not meant for batoning and things like that. Anything that's really hard use, you're not going to take out a 500-pound hinderer and beat it off a tree unless you can afford to do that sort of thing, and that's absolutely fine. But I'm not, because I can't. So I have knives that do that sort of thing. And there's two of them. They're just two simple brother knives. One's the F005 and the F007 is the top one. One's a sabre flat grind and one is a Scandi grind. And they're both for different jobs. And I keep these in my pack. Will I use them much? Do you know, I'm a pensioner. I don't go out bushcrafting anymore. Although I was a really genuine all in bushcrafter in times gone past, where I used to go and camp by myself, but I was doing that for pleasure, and I would have practiced different skills, of lighting fires, different ways of lighting fires, smokeless fires, all that sort of thing. I practiced all that, but I don't do it anymore. But I like having these around because they're cheap enough that it's not money sitting in there that I'm worried about. I think these cost about 30, 35 pound each. They're not expensive on AliExpress. Absolutely fine. They come with a Kydex sheath and one of those tech locks on it for 30 quid, 35 quid. I have no fear doing anything around the house, especially this. This is what I would call a really good camp knife, because it's a good high flat grind. It's great for slicing, and when you're bushcrafting, I usually take a lump of meat with a stewing steak or something, potatoes. You're just going to cut them up, throw them in a pot, wee bit of gravy. There's your dinner made. So that's a camp knife that I would use for tasks, kitchen tasks around the camp. This one I would use for feather sticking if I wanted to sit and whittle a big bit of wood, and just sitting. Sometimes I used to just sit for hours just taking bits of wood off because I enjoyed it. It takes your mind off everything that's going on in the world. So that's what I would call my hard use knives. Are they good for around the house? Absolutely. This or this, if you're out the back and you're cutting wood, there's nothing better than a Scandi grind. Nothing. And if you've just got other jobs around where you're cutting up old carpet and things like that, this is absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. So they're here, and if I need to use them, I'll use them. Now, when I bushcraft, hard use was a different thing altogether. This would have been my hard use knife for wood. And I'm going to make this specific. This is what I would have done my feather sticking with, my lighting fires, light batoning on, bits of stick just to break them up to get a fire started. Just kindling, if you like. That's what I would have used for this. And if I wanted to do any carving, this is a Mora. This has been battered, and it must be a 15-year-old. I've batoned with it. You shouldn't, but I have batoned with it. It took it, but I'm only breaking up kindling. I'm not batoning a log. You still got to be sensible. If this was your only knife, you don't want to break it. So I have that, and I have my the tape on there, and I have my ferro rod, which is attached by an elastic band so as it doesn't pop off. That would have been my everything sort of knife. It would have just clipped on my belt. I didn't want anything fancy. When this is on my belt, there's nothing poking into me. Absolutely fine. If I didn't want to put it in the belt, I could clip it under my trousers and just walk about. I didn't really walk about carrying a big knife. I had it on my belt if I was around the campfire doing something, but I didn't go walking in the forest with it. It's just not that kind of place over here. So I always would, if I left the camp, I took a backpack with me with knives in it that I might need what I was going to do if I was foraging or whatever. So that would have been my most used knife. That's a more robust, and it's the old type. They have a newer one now, which is a bit of a shorter blade, and the handle's a bit different. This is one of the most comfortable knives I've ever cut with. Full stop. Bar none. One of the most comfortable. So that would have been my knife. But hard use. When I use the word hard use, I don't think of a pen knife. I don't think of a pocket knife. I think of a chopping tool. Now, you can have a hatchet, you can have whatever, but they're big and cumbersome. And over here, they're frowned upon a bit. You know, if you've got to walk in through something and you have a hatchet in the back of your rucksack, people don't tend to like it. So I didn't want to attract anybody to me. I just went to my camp, put everything I needed in a bag. That was my axe. I used that for years. This was one of Sally's old kitchen. It wasn't an old kitchen knife, it was nearly new. But I liked it because the steel was good on it. It stropped easy. I tried it all out beforehand. And I used that for years for chopping up wood. Specifically bigger logs, batoning. If I needed to baton anything, this is what I used. But it was mostly used for delimbing. Because when I go camping by myself, unless I'm practicing bushcraft skills, which I'll not do anymore now, I'll lift dead wood and I just trim it with this. I don't need, if it's thin enough, I can just put this on top of a log, chop it and break it up for firewood. But if I've got a thicker log, oh, excuse me, I've done it again. Stop it, Stephen. If I've got a log this side, I don't really want to be using this to baton with. Again, if it's your only tool, you don't want to risk it. I use this for delimbing the branches off the log. Then I find a tree with a V in it and I put the log into that V and I snap and then I move it forward and snap and I break wood big enough to do a fire. That's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, even when you've got hard use knives, you don't have to. There's things about us that we can use instead of risking breaking a tool, a good axe or something like that. But for delimbing, yes, an axe is great. And for taking down small trees, brilliant. But so's this. This is heavy. This is over £1. So this is going to take down anything that I'm ever going to need while I'm bushcrafting. And mostly I just need kindling and a couple of trees that or a couple of limbs that I'll break up into smaller bits and put on the fire. I don't really even need to touch the knife. So that's my version of what hard use is and what tools that I recommend for hard use. A cheap bushcraft knife. For me, you know, that I'm not frightened to use or I'll break it. I'm not going to worry too much. Now, if you're a collector and you collect high-end, like Slick Slicers yesterday put up one of the most beautiful bushcraft knives I have ever seen. And I am envious. I would love it. But for me now, I'd be too frightened of damaging it if I took it out and use it. It's too expensive. I mean, bushcraft knives, you can go up, like his one was about £300. And he waited 3 years to get it. I just wouldn't risk something like that. And that's fine. But I collect knives that I'm never really going to use much. So nobody can talk. We all collect knives that we're not going to use much. But this is what I think of hard use knives. This is exactly what I think. They're inexpensive, but they do the job. And you'll never find out what knife does the job until you get out and actually do the job. So, there we go. It wasn't a rant as such, but I feel as if I've ranted. But it's just hard use. Let's be sure when you're talking hard use, this is hard use tools. Pocket knives and pen knives, and I use the word all the time myself. I'm not saying it to detract. I'm just putting out what I genuinely think of. When I think of hard use, that's where my head goes. The other things, I have hard use knives, but when I say hard use, I mean extended cardboard cutting, you know, things like that. That's what I call, that's sort of domestic hard use, and this is hard use. So, and a little breakdown of what I think. If you disagree, if you agree, get it down below. Talk to me about it. Tell me what you think. Tell me I'm wrong. I very don't. Come on. I doubt it. Bye-bye. I'm away for a cup of tea. I'll see you tomorrow for a wee chat.